Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. A talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me through benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is internationally syndicated solely due to the love and support that you all continue to give. We're available across all major distributors, and as long as you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in, because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Robert R. Tisch. Now we're going to be discussing his incredible book, Crossing the Wild Pacific, Captain's Log of the Yacht Argo. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's BOOKSACADEMY.org. Man, I'm telling you, it's a lot of places. And I quickly want to take this opportunity and point out the fact that Robert was brought to us by Books Academy. So for writers out there listening in, if you've gone through your process and now you're listening to me and you're like, Benji, I need some assistance moving the book, brother. I wrote it. Now I need somebody to help me get it out. Well, head on over to BooksAcademy.org and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is well equipped to help you do just that. And listen, people, sit back and get ready, man. This is about to be a phenomenal discussion. What does it take to not just have a dream, but to actually cast off the lines and pursue it? Now, I ask that question because it's so universal. We have all been at a moment in our lives where we've sat down and we thought, right? We aspired to reach something that was off the beaten path. Listen, Robert and his wife, they had a similar desire, okay? They did exactly that, turning a vision into a 10,000-mile voyage from Florida to New Zealand and all around in their yacht Argo. You see, their book, Crossing the Wild Pacific, man, it's more than just a captain's log of storms and exotic ports. Now that it is, but additionally, it's a masterclass in the gritty reality of making a dream happen. And I love the fact that, listen, we're going to get into some of the nuances here today, because on the surface, you're going to see a beautiful journey, right? A dream come to fruition that they essentially worked their entire lives for, maybe indirectly, but it's something that was a challenge, right? It was not an overnight feat. And as Robert will tell you, man, this thing was just shy of a year to go through. And I'm sure just the planning and preparation for it probably took even longer than that. This is one that is going to be wildly entertaining, but hopefully it's going to inspire some of us listening in, and hopefully a lot of the readers picking up the book to maybe embark upon their journey to chase and complete their dreams. Sit back. Here we go. Robert, welcome to the network, man. Thank you for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you, Benji. Glad to be here.
Listen, man, we're glad to have you. Robert, what you've done is remarkably impressive, not only by culminating the book, that we are eternally grateful for, but being able to do something that a lot of people aspire to, whether it's, again, the voyage that you and your wife took, or just that notion of pursuing a dream that they've always had. I think there's this underlying inspiration there that I think is really so powerful. So we're looking forward to the discussion. First and foremost, before you and your wife embarked upon the journey, man, start off at the foundation and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I owned an investment management company here in Michigan. So for many years, I was trading stocks and bonds and certificates for my clients. I sold the business to a public company, and that provided some of the resources that we needed to fund this project. My wife was a surgeon, and she also had a very good practice, and we closed the practice, and the two of us set out on this adventure. It was something we wanted to do. We had boats on the Great Lakes, which are, for many of you that aren't from this part of the country, these lakes are as challenging as the ocean. We spent 5 years sailing the Great Lakes, and by sailing, I use the term loosely. Cruising is a better word for it, because these aren't sailboats that we use. These are motor yachts. And you might ask, why did we choose a motor yacht? Why not go with a sailboat? One of the reasons is my wife won't go on sailboats. She doesn't want to live at a 45-degree angle. And I'm 6'5", and I'm too big for sailboats. They're just too small for me by and large. So we have always looked for boats that were big enough to take care of me. They had to have enough headroom. And my wife likes air conditioning and sub-zero refrigerators and all that sort of thing. So we settled on the 2 or 3 boats that we owned. But our ambition was really inspired by sailing on the Great Lakes. And once we had done that, our ambition became really the world.
Listen, Robert, first and foremost, thank you for articulating all of that. And I would say, as someone that has been on both as well, like I'm definitely not a sailor. I don't have the love for the sea as you and your wife had. I will say, man, it's just the amount of work that goes into a sailboat, like going sailing. You don't get to just sit back and relax, man. There's constant things that you're doing aside from, yes, being at that 45-degree angle. That is fun. Definitely not a leisure activity, I would say.
I think these things are callings. You really have to have an inspiration within yourself to do these things.
Absolutely.
For me, I always wanted to be on the ocean. I was in the Navy for 4 years. I crossed the Pacific several times, 4 times with the Navy. So I like being at sea. And my wife, lucky me, is a good sport and willing to put up with the inconveniences and the work it required. You have to have a supportive spouse or you can't do these things.
Of course. And listen, thank you for mentioning that, because that's a great segue to where I want to go next. As a married man myself, listen, man, just combining 2 individuals' lives, right? Personalities, experiences, all of those things that go into leading a successful partnership in marriage, it takes a lot, right? There's give and take, there's sacrifice. It's as much as you'd like to be a 50-50 split. Sometimes, for anybody else that's out there that's married, you get it, man. Sometimes it's 70-30, sometimes it's 60-40. There's a give and take in that partnership.
That's right.
I'm curious to know, Robert, not many people have to balance that partnership in such a confined space for so long. How did that work, man? And I'm sure there was tests that it put on your relationship. Talk to us about that.
We like being with each other. And to your point, I don't think you should buy a boat with your spouse if you don't want to be with her. It's not the place to be. But we enjoy each other's company. We like what we're doing. My wife was extremely supportive and helpful. And she took care of a lot of the things that I wasn't very good at. And of course, my skills are different. But one of the things that's interesting is that she's a small woman compared to me. And there were many places on that boat that we had to perform maintenance or do inspections on that I frankly couldn't get into. But I would send her there. And in the Navy, we had a phrase for people who were mechanics and that sort of thing. We call them diesel monkeys. So I mentioned that to her once, and I've never quite gotten over it. I should say she's not quite gotten over it, but I hear about it from time to time. But in the book, you'll see a picture of her crawling down beneath the shaft on our boat to make sure that the drip rate was correct. So anyway, we use each other's talents.
Love that. Robert, let's change gears here. And I want to talk about the title, but the title in reference to what you experienced, and really the operative term in the title being wild. Because of course, we think of the Pacific as wild because of its storms and its vastness. But aside from the ocean itself, you and your wife also encountered remote cultures, right? You stopped at all these different places along your journey. Did you discover a different, even more profound wild, perhaps one of profound peace or traditions? Talk to us a little bit more about the different interpretations of the wild and how it may have related to different experiences outside of the water as well.
Your question really goes to the heart of the objective that we had, which was to find that wild world that exists in our imagination. What I found in reality is that the world is pretty homogeneous. Even small islands have vestiges. They have evidence of Western man and all of the junk that we live with, whether it's a Holiday Inn or a Wendy's or whatever. They're everywhere, and everything that you can buy at the local Costco you can find in Papeete. It's all the same. So what did I find? I found that from a human civilization point of view, it's all the same. It's all homogeneous. As far as the 2 takeaways, I guess, that I could summarize here in a few words, is that this is a doggone small world. It's really small. You have no idea. You're living in Los Angeles and you're working with a 1/4 acre of land or something, or your house is on, or an acre. And so as human beings, we're wrapped up in our daily living. But the much bigger picture is that this is a very small planet that is fragile. And it's fragile because wherever we go out in the middle of the ocean, we find evidence of the pollution, essentially in this case coming from Asia, because it floats across the Pacific.
Right.
Whether it's somebody's toothbrush or a boot or something like that, it's everywhere. And the declination of fish and wildlife, they're being ravaged to the point of extinction, as we all know, but we could see it. So the size of the planet and the ravaging of our environment are two of the biggest things that I took away from this. I understood the environmental impact before I left, but in places that we have sailed, not just the Pacific, but for example, in Newfoundland, one of our journeys was from Alaska to Newfoundland through the Panama Canal. And what I'm going to say is true in all these locations, that after World War II, the diesel engine became ubiquitous. Fishermen stopped using manual ways of catching fish, and they started using nets, big nets. Today the nets are 20, 30 miles long. They scoop up everything in their path. For 500 years, we had codfish that fed Europe. Today, their codfish are, for all practical purposes, they're not extinct, but they're diminished to the point that there isn't a practical season on fishing them. And that all happened in 30 years. So our audience all has heard this. But when I go to different places in the world and see, for example, a Japanese fish broker on the radio telling all the boats in the area that if they have caught a fish of a certain type, they want to buy it right now. And it's just amazing. So the size of the Earth, it's only 9,000 miles from Tokyo to Dublin. And that's not very far when you think about it. It's within the human experience to be able to walk across that entire continent, or two continents. For us, at a mere 6 or 8 miles an hour, which is about how fast our boat will go, we could get across half the Earth basically in 9 months. And that's stopping for a good times like 21 days in the Galapagos.
Yeah.
So those are my takeaways, really. It's a small world and it's fragile.
It's just a quick thing that came up in passing when you were mentioning, the fishing expedition and hearing over the radio that I believe you said the country was Japan, how they would buy it instantly if they had one of the particular fish. It just reminds, it doesn't matter where you go. Capitalism at its finest, man, it's everywhere.
It's also brutal.
Oh, absolutely.
It demands so many mouths to feed.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Robert, as we start to close out, man, because people understand that we're not going to give it all away. You know where you got to go. You got to purchase your copies today. But I do want to I wanted to compare and contrast things with my final two questions here. As you were going on this journey, this is something that I'm sure there were moments that were taken directly out of a Hollywood film, right? And something that, again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, is someone that would never, it's just not for me, right? Like, I don't get seasick. I like the ocean, but I don't love it in the same way. But I'm curious, man, as you were traveling, was there ever a moment of fear, ever a moment of terror, either through a storm or something, a mechanical failure, or any individual moments like that you can shed some light on where it was like, oh my, I think we might want to turn back?
Well, a couple of times. One, it was a very nice day. We had left the Galapagos. We were within sight of the last island and steaming to the west. And all of a sudden, my fathometer showed me that we had less than 6 feet of water. We were out in the middle of the ocean. Had less than 6 feet of water.
Wow.
Under our keel. And I thought, holy cats, I'm going to drive this thing on the rocks. Where are the rocks? And I scurried around looking at all the charts, and there are no rocks. And then I realized what was under me was about 20 feet of plankton. That in the late evening when the sun goes down, the plankton comes up. And it was so thick that my fathometer thought it was land. So that was an interesting moment.
Oh, my goodness.
And another time, which is toward the end of the book, we got caught in a typhoon off the coast of New Zealand, and we spent 13 hours battling this storm, and it's quite a story. It's in the book. We faced 30-foot waves, 65-mile-an-hour winds, the force 10 gale. So that was a pretty interesting time. Let's see. I'm trying to think of a couple more. How about just 17 days between the Galapagos and the Marquesa Islands? 17 days on the ocean. There's nothing out there, zero. You can't fly a plane out there. There's no place to land. if you get sick or hurt or something, you're going to be sick and hurt by yourself because nobody's out there. There's no ships or anything. But the waves are huge, which is why we call it the high seas. It's just beautiful and fascinating. Regarding the last thing I was telling you about the food and so forth, we had, well, my wife is she's listening to me here and reminding me that we had all kinds of boat problems, hydraulic problems on the boat where stabilizers would go out and we didn't have those for a while, and there's all these mechanical things that go wrong. So the book has all these kind of stories about mechanical difficulties and how we got the parts and things like that. So they're actually, I wrote the book while we were sailing. It was a website that I created and posted, and I had about slightly less than 400,000 people following me at that time on this journey. And of course, I couldn't have begun this journey without the help of all kinds of people.
Of course, yeah.
Some of them anonymous that just write books like I have that told me how to go about doing it. Others were people that taught me or showed me the way. I've already mentioned my wife, but there are many other people.
So first and foremost, thank you for that, man. And listen, I had another question that I wanted to go into, but I don't even think it's worth it in this instance. And I'm going to tell you why, because what you stated, I think it perfectly encapsulates so much of the journey. Yeah, on the surface, this book is about this, as I mentioned to you, about this monumental voyage that you and your wife had taken, but there are so many messages to be received. First and foremost, just with the obstacles that you and your wife faced, there is a great message there to be pulled, right? Reading in between the lines, people, they're talking about what they experienced on this yacht going on this journey, but really copy and paste your own adversity. There's so much to be gained with regards to facing those challenges and staying level-headed and working through it. I think that's a great message, right? And one of the other things that I'm taking from this is, listen, for you and your wife on that particular trip, maybe the expedition, or the goal rather, was New Zealand. But listen, again, it's another copy and paste moment for everybody listening in right now. Like, your New Zealand is out there. And here's the thing. It might not be a country. It might be a career change. It might be a creative project or a personal goal that feels just as intimidating. But allow this book, allow Robert and Rebecca's meticulous preparation, their unwavering spirit, allow this book, Crossing the Wild Pacific, to be your guide. Because I promise you, man, reading in between the lines, there's so much to be gained. But reading on the lines, there's a lot of entertainment to be witnessed as well. Again, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble. You got to purchase your copies today and get lost in it. And allow it, as I mentioned before, to be that inspiration for you to cross your own wild Pacific and see what's on the horizon for you next. Robert, this has been a true pleasure, man. An absolute honor. I really do mean that. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you very much, Benji. Appreciate it.